She called him just staff, but he was the billionaire behind it all. Asterisk. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Emma Rodriguez gathered her design portfolios from the reception desk. Another rejected pitch, another client who wanted something more mainstream. She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear and pressed the elevator button with more force than necessary. The building felt hollow at 7 in the evening. Most employees had rushed home hours ago, leaving behind the sterile smell of office coffee and the hum of air conditioning. Emma's reflection stared back at her from the polished elevator doors, showing tired brown eyes and a wrinkled blazer. She'd bought secondhand 3 months ago. The elevator arrived with a cheerful ding that felt mocking. She stepped inside and pressed the button for the parking garage, already mentally preparing for another evening of instant ramen and job applications. Halfway down, the elevator shuddered and stopped. "No, no, no," Emma whispered, jabbing the buttons frantically. The lights dimmed, then brightened, then settled into an ominous flicker. She pressed the emergency call button, but only static answered. Her breathing quickened. The walls seemed to press closer. Emma had always hated small spaces, ever since childhood when her older brother locked her in the closet during hide-and-seek. She pressed her back against the wall, sliding down until she sat on the floor, knees drawn up. "Breathe," she told herself, but the air felt thick and insufficient. That's when she heard the gentle knock from outside the doors. "Hello? Anyone in there?" The voice was deep, calm, with a slight roughness that suggested someone who worked with his hands. "Yes," Emma called out, her voice cracking. "I'm stuck." "Okay, don't worry. I'm Daniel. I work maintenance here. Can you tell me your name, Emma?" "Emma Rodriguez." She pressed her palms against her thighs to stop them from shaking. "Nice to meet you, Emma. I know this is scary, but you're going to be fine. I'm going to get you out of there, but it might take a few minutes. Can you talk to me while I work?" Emma heard the sound of metal tools clinking together. "What do you want to know? Anything?" "What do you do here?" "I'm a freelance graphic designer. Trying to be. I was here for a client meeting that went nowhere." She laughed bitterly. "They said my work was too emotional, too personal. Apparently, corporate logos shouldn't have feelings." Daniel's chuckle was warm through the metal doors. "Sounds like they don't know good art when they see it. I bet your designs tell stories." Something in his tone made her relax slightly. "They do. It's every logo, every poster. It's supposed to mean something. My art professor always said that design without emotion is just decoration." Smart professor. "What kind of stories do your designs tell?" Emma found herself opening up to this stranger she couldn't see. "Hope, mostly. Resilience. I grew up in a neighborhood where beauty was scarce, so I learned to create it. My mom cleaned offices at night to pay for my art supplies. She used to say that even the smallest splash of color could change how someone sees their whole day." She sounds like a wise woman. She was. "Cancer took her 2 years ago." Emma's voice caught. "Right before I graduated. She never got to see me become a real artist." The elevator lurched suddenly, and Emma gasped. "Hey, you're okay?" Daniel's voice came immediately. "That was just me adjusting the cable tension. We're almost there." "How do you know so much about elevators?" "I know a little about everything. Started working with my hands young. My father believed that understanding how things work from the ground up was important, no matter what you end up doing with your life." The elevator shuddered once more, then began moving smoothly downward. Emma stood up, brushing dust from her skirt. When the doors opened, she expected to see a typical maintenance worker in coveralls instead. She found herself looking at a man in dark jeans and a simple gray t-shirt. He was tall, with sandy brown hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it, the most striking green eyes she'd ever seen. His hands, holding a small toolkit, were clean but clearly capable. There was something about his posture, the way he carried himself, that seemed different from other maintenance workers she'd met. "Thank you," Emma said, stepping out of the elevator. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't been here." Daniel smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Just doing my job." "Are you feeling better?" She nodded, though her heart was still racing, and she wasn't sure if it was from the elevator incident or from the way he was looking at her. "I should go. Thank you again, Daniel." "Emma," he called as she started walking toward the parking garage. "Your professor was right. Don't let anyone convince you to make your art smaller to fit their comfort zone. She turned back, but he was already disappearing around a corner, toolkit in hand. Emma stood there for a moment, replaying their conversation. There had been something in his voice when he talked about his father, about understanding things from the ground up. It didn't quite match the simple maintenance worker story, but maybe she was overthinking it. Maybe she just wanted there to be more to Daniel because he'd been kind to her when she needed it most. Emma walked to her car, but she couldn't stop, thinking about his green eyes and the way he'd made her feel safe with just his voice through an elevator door. Emma discovered the small cafe 3 blocks from the office building purely by accident. She'd been walking aimlessly after another failed client meeting, trying to clear her head before going home to her cramped studio apartment. The hand-painted sign reading "Grounded" hung above a door wedged between a dry cleaner and a used bookstore. Inside, mismatched furniture created cozy conversation nooks, and local artwork covered every available wall space. A owner, a woman, with silver-streaked hair and paint-stained fingers, waved from behind the counter. "First time here, honey?" "Is it that obvious?" Emma asked, managing a smile. "I remember everyone who appreciates good art. I'm Rose. What can I get you?" Emma ordered a lavender latte and found a small table by the window. She pulled out her sketchbook, hoping to capture some of the cafe's eclectic charm. The afternoon, light filtered through vintage lace curtains, casting interesting shadows across her page. She was deep in concentration when someone cleared their throat softly. "Mind if I sit? Everywhere else is taken." Emma looked up to find Daniel standing beside her table, holding a simple black coffee. Her pulse quickened unexpectedly. He wore jeans again, but this time with a navy blue button-down shirt rolled up at the sleeves. Without his toolkit, he looked less like maintenance and more like someone who belonged in this artistic space. "Of course," she said, closing her sketchbook quickly. "Don't stop on my account. I'd love to see what you're working on." He settled into the chair across from her, his presence somehow making the small table feel intimate. Emma hesitated, then reopened the book. "It's just the cafe. I love how everything here has a story." Daniel leaned forward to study her sketch. His fingers brushed hers as he turned the page slightly, and Emma felt warmth spread up her arm. "This is incredible. You've captured something I never noticed." "What's that?" "The way the light hits that painting over there." He pointed to a small oil painting of a woman reading. "In your sketch, she looks like she's about to step out of the frame." Emma looked at her drawing with new eyes. "I've always seen art as alive, like it's waiting for the right person to understand its message." They talked for 2 hours. Daniel asked thoughtful questions about her design process, her inspiration, her dreams of opening her own studio someday. In return, he shared stories about buildings he'd worked in, the hidden beauty in mechanical systems, the satisfaction of fixing something that seemed hopelessly broken. "You talk about maintenance work like it's an art form," Emma observed. Stirring the foam in her second latte, Daniel's smile was mysterious. "Maybe it is. There's something beautiful about understanding how things work together, how each part supports the whole. Buildings, machines, people, they all need the right care to function at their best. Is that why you do it? The work, I mean?" He was quiet for a moment, staring into his coffee cup. "My father used to say that you can't truly lead anything until you understand it from the foundation up. Every job I've had has taught me something essential about how the world really works." "That's a beautiful philosophy. Your father sounds like a wise man." He was. "He died when I was 25, just as I was figuring out who I wanted to be." Daniel's voice carried a weight that Emma recognized, the particular pain of losing a parent too soon. Without thinking, she reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. "I'm sorry, it's hard, isn't it? Making choices without their guidance." Daniel turned his hand palm up, intertwining their fingers. "Yes, it is. But sometimes you meet someone who helps you remember what really matters." The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. A key. Emma felt her cheeks warm, but she didn't pull her hand away. There was something magnetic about Daniel, something that made her want to trust him completely despite knowing him for such a short time. "Emma," he said softly, "would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? There's this little Italian place I know." She nodded before she could overthink it. "I'd like that," as they prepared to leave. Daniel helped her gather her art supplies. "You know," he said, shouldering her messenger bag without being asked, "there's an underground art show tomorrow night. Local artist, very informal. Maybe we could stop by after dinner?" "How do you know about underground art shows?" Emma asked, amused. "I pay attention to what happens in my city." Besides, his green eyes sparkled with mischief. "There's a lot about me you don't know yet." Outside the cafe, Daniel walked her to her car. The evening air was cool, and Emma pulled her cardigan closer. Without hesitation, Daniel stepped closer, his body blocking the wind. "Thank you," she said, looking up at him. "For the coffee, for listening, for making me feel like my art matters." "It does matter, Emma. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." His hand cupped her cheek gently, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "You matter." For a moment, Emma thought he might kiss her. The air between them seemed charged with possibility. Instead, Daniel stepped back with visible effort. "Night," he said, his voice slightly rough. 7 o'clock? Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched him walk away, noting the confident set of his shoulders, the way other people seemed to notice him without realizing why. There were layers to Daniel that she was only beginning to glimpse, and Emma found herself eager to discover them all. That night, she dreamed of green eyes and gentle hands, someone who saw her art the way she'd always hoped it would be seen, someone who made her feel like she was finally becoming the person she was meant to be. The Italian restaurant Daniel had chosen was tucked away in the historic district, small enough that their knees bumped under the tiny table. Emma wore her one good dress, a deep burgundy piece that made her skin glow in the candlelight. Daniel had arrived in dark slacks and a white shirt that somehow made his eyes look even greener. "This is perfect," Emma said, twirling her pasta fork through the homemade linguine. "How did you find this place?" "I used to do some work for the owners." "Brother. Marco makes everything from scratch, even grows his own herbs on the roof." Daniel gestured toward the small garden visible through the back window. Emma noticed how icily Daniel talked to Marco when he came by their table, switching between English and what sounded like fluent Italian. There was a familiarity there that spoke of more than just occasional visits. "You're full of surprises," she said after Marco left them with complimentary tiramisu. "Is that good or bad?" "Good. Definitely good. I like that you're not easily categorized." Daniel reached across the table, his fingers tracing patterns on her wrist. "Tell me about the first piece of art that made you want to create." Emma shivered at his touch. "There was this mural in my neighborhood, painted on the side of a laundromat."
Now, most people probably thought it was just graffiti, but it showed this.
Phoenix rising from what looked like concrete and steel. The colors were so vibrant, so full of hope. I used to walk 3 blocks out of my way just to see it. What happened to it? The building was torn down when I was 16. I cried for days. That's when I decided I wanted to create beauty that couldn't be destroyed, something that could live in people's hearts, even if the physical piece disappeared. Daniel's thumb pressed against her pulse point. "That's why your work is so powerful. You're not just designing logos or posters. You're giving people hope." The intensity in his voice made Emma's breath catch. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm fooling myself. Maybe I should just take whatever corporate job will pay the bills." "Don't you dare," Daniel said firmly. "The world needs artists like you, Emma. More than you know." After dinner, they walked hand in hand through the old warehouse district. The underground art show was in a converted factory space, accessed through an unmarked door that Daniel seemed to know by heart. Inside, local artists had transformed the raw space into something magical. Sculptures made from recycled materials caught the light from strategic spotlights. While murals covered every concrete wall, Emma moved through the space like someone discovering treasure. Daniel stayed close, his hand on the small of her back, guiding her toward pieces he thought she'd appreciate. His knowledge of art was surprising, sophisticated in a way that didn't match his maintenance worker story. Daniel, a woman with short, purple hair and multiple piercings, approached them. "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." "Hi, Zoe." "Emma, this is Zoe Chen. She's the photographer whose work is featured in the East Corner." Emma shook Zoe's hand, immediately liking her warm smile. "Your photographs are stunning. The way you capture emotion in everyday moments is remarkable." You Daniels told me about your graphic design work. He says you have a gift for storytelling through visual art. Emma looked at Daniel in surprise. You talked about my work? I may have mentioned meeting a talented artist, Daniel said, his cheeks slightly flushed. Zoe grinned. He was very enthusiastic. Actually, Emma, I'd love to see your portfolio sometime. I'm curating a group show next month, and I think your aesthetic would fit perfectly. Emma's heart raced. Really? That would be incredible. Daniel has my contact information. Have him. Give it to you. After Zoe moved on to greet other guests, Emma turned to Daniel. How do you know so many people in the art world? Daniel was quiet for a moment, leading her toward a quieter corner of the gallery. I've always believed in supporting local artists. This city's creative community is what gives it soul. They stopped in front of a painting that took Emma's breath away. It showed a figure breaking free from chains made of gray corporate buildings, with colors streaming from their hands like liquid light. It's called Breaking Free, Daniel said softly. The artist painted it after leaving a job that was killing her creativity. Emma stared at the painting, seeing her own struggles reflected in the brushstrokes. It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The best art usually is. Daniel moved behind her, his chest against her back, his arms coming around her waist. Emma leaned into his warmth, feeling safe and desired in equal measure. Emma, he murmured, against her ear. There's something I need to tell you. She turned in his arms, looking up at his face. The gallery lighting cast shadows that made his features look almost mysterious. What is it? Before he could answer, someone called his name from across the room. Emma saw Daniel's jaw tighten with frustration. Daniel Cross. There you are. A man in an expensive suit approached them, followed by a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and diamond earrings that caught the light. Richard, Jennifer, Daniel said stiffly, I didn't realize you'd be here tonight. We heard about the show from the society pages. Thought we'd see what the common folk are creating these days. Richard's laugh was condescending. Emma felt Daniel's body tense against hers. There was something happening here that she didn't understand, an undercurrent of tension that made her uncomfortable. And who is this lovely young lady? Jennifer asked, her smile sharp. Emma Rodriguez, Emma said, extending her hand. I'm a graphic designer. How charming, Jennifer said in a tone that suggested it was anything but. Daniel has such interesting hobbies. The word hobbies hit Emma like a slap. She looked between Daniel and the couple, suddenly aware of the expensive watch on Richard's wrist, the designer handbag Jennifer carried, the way they looked at the art around them like tourists in a zoo. We should go, Daniel said quietly, but Emma was already stepping away from his embrace. Actually, I think I'll stay a bit longer. I want to talk to more of the artists. She saw something like panic flash in Daniel's green eyes. Emma, please. Let me explain. Explain what? That your friends think my life is your hobby? The hurt in her voice was clear, and she saw Daniel flinch. But she was already moving away, disappearing into the crowd of artists and art lovers who felt like her people in a way that his well-dressed friends never could. Emma spent the rest of the evening talking to painters and sculptors, photographers, and installation artists. They welcomed her warmly, several asking for her contact information for future collaborations. But even as she networked and made connections that could change her career, part of her kept looking toward the door, hoping Daniel would come back and explain what had just happened. He never did. Emma spent the next 3 days avoiding the office building where she'd first met Daniel. She threw herself into work, accepting a small logo project that barely paid enough to cover her coffee habit. But every time she tried to focus on color, palettes and typography, she found herself thinking about green eyes and the way Daniel had said her name like it was something precious. On Thursday morning, her phone rang with an unknown number. Emma Rodriguez? Yes, says Patricia Wells from Cross Industries. Mr. Cross would like to schedule a meeting with you regarding a potential design contract. Emma's heart stopped. Cross Industries was one of the largest tech companies in the city, known for their innovative products and generous support of local charities. I think there's been a mistake. I don't know anyone at Cross Industries. Mr. Daniel Cross specifically requested you. Would tomorrow at 10 work for your schedule? The phone nearly slipped from Emma's hands. Daniel Cross. the Daniel she'd met was Daniel Cross, CEO of Cross Industries, billionaire entrepreneur, one of the most powerful men in the city. "Ms. Rodriguez, are you there?" "Yes, Yes, 10 o'clock tomorrow would be fine." Emma hung up and immediately Googled Daniel Cross. Photo after photo showed her Daniel in expensive suits, cutting ribbons at charity events, speaking at business conferences, shaking hands with politicians and celebrities. The maintenance worker story, the simple lifestyle. All of it had been a lie. She felt sick. The Cross Industries building was downtown, all glass and steel reaching toward the sky. Emma wore her best blazer and carried her portfolio, but she felt like she was walking into enemy territory. The elevator she rode to the executive floor was nothing like the cramped box where they'd first met. This one was spacious, silent, lined with mirrors that reflected her nervous expression. The executive assistant who greeted her was polished and professional. "Mr. Cross is waiting for you in the boardroom." Emma followed her down a corridor lined with abstract art worth more than Emma's annual income. The boardroom had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a table that could seat 20 people, and Daniel sitting at the head of it in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her rent. He stood when she entered. Emma saw the uncertainty in his eyes. "Thank you for coming," he said formally. "Did I have a choice? You're Daniel Cross." She set her portfolio on the table with more force than necessary. "I'm still the same person you met in the elevator, Emma." "Are you?" "Because the person I met was honest about who he was." Daniel dismissed his assistant with a nod, waiting until they were alone before speaking again. "I was honest about everything that mattered. Everything that mattered. Let me think you were a maintenance worker? You listened to me talk about struggling to pay bills while you were sitting on $1 billion fortune? I never meant to deceive you. I've been going by Daniel Cross my whole life, and I do know how to fix elevators. My father made sure I learned every aspect of how businesses actually function." Emma laughed bitterly. "Your father, the wise maintenance supervisor?" "My father, the previous CEO of Cross Industries, who started as a janitor and worked his way up. He insisted I spend summers working every job in this company before I ever set foot in the executive offices." That gave Emma pause, but she wasn't ready to let go of her anger. "So what is this? Rich boy wants to play with the poor artist for a while." Daniel's jaw tightened. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you thought it would be fun to slum it with someone who doesn't know who you are. I wanted someone to see me, not my bank account." Daniel moved around the table toward her, but Emma stepped back. "Do you know what it's like to never be sure if people like you or what you can do for them? To have every conversation be about business deals or charity donations or investment opportunities? No, I don't know what that's like. But I do know what it's like to have someone I trusted make me feel like a fool." Daniel stopped moving toward her. "You're not a fool, Emma. You're brilliant and talented, and everything I said about your art was true. Was any of it real? The coffee shop, the dinner, the way you looked at me. All of it was real. The most real I've felt in years." Emma wanted to believe him. The pain in his voice seemed genuine, and she could see the man she'd fallen for beneath the expensive suit. But the betrayal cut deep. "I need some air," she said, moving toward the windows. Daniel followed her, stopping just close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Emma, please, let me show you something." He pressed a button on the wall, and a section of the window slid open, revealing a small balcony she hadn't noticed. They stepped outside into the crisp morning air, the city sprawling below them. "Is my favorite place in the building," Daniel said quietly. "When everything gets overwhelming, I come here and remember why I do this work." Emma looked out at the city, seeing her neighborhood in the distance. "Why do you do it?" "Because I can make a difference. This company employs over 10,000 people. We fund art programs in schools, support local businesses, invest in clean technology. I didn't choose this life, but I can choose what to do with it. You could have told me. When you were talking about how corporate clients don't understand real art, when you were sharing your dreams of opening your own studio, every time I tried to find the right moment, something stopped me." Emma turned to face him fully. "What stopped you?" Fear, he said simply. Fear that you'd look at me the way everyone else does? Like a walking dollar sign instead of a person? They stood in silence for a moment, the wind stirring Emma's hair. Daniel reached out hesitantly, tucking a strand behind her ear. I fell for you, Emma. Not because you didn't know who I was, but because of who you are. Your passion, your kindness, the way you see beauty everywhere, the way you made me remember what it felt like to be human. Emma's anger was fading, replaced by something more complicated. I fell for you too. But I fell for someone who I thought understood what it was like to work for everything you have. I do understand that. Maybe not in the same way you do, but I've worked for this. Every decision I make affects thousands of people. Every day I try to prove I deserve the responsibility. I inherited. Emma studied his face, seeing the weight he carried, the loneliness beneath the power. What happens now? That depends on you, Daniel said. I'd like to start over, honestly this time. No more secrets. And if I said yes, what would that look like? Dating the CEO of Cross Industries? It would look like two people who care about each other, figuring it out together. I know it won't be simple, but nothing worthwhile ever is. Emma felt herself wavering. The hurt was still there, but underneath it was something stronger. The connection they'd shared had been real, even if the circumstances had been complicated. Need time to think, she said finally. Daniel nodded, disappointment flickering across his features. Of course, but Emma, the offer I'm about to make has nothing to do with our personal relationship. Cross Industries needs someone to redesign our community outreach materials. Someone who understands that art should tell stories and give hope. The salary would be enough for you to open that studio you dreamed about. Emma's eyes widened. Daniel, I can't accept that. It would feel like charity. It's not charity, it's business. I've seen your work, and you're exactly what we need. Think about it, but know that the job is yours, regardless of what you decide about us. As they prepared to leave the balcony, Daniel caught her hand. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not for who I am, but for how you found out. You deserved better than that. Emma squeezed his hand once before letting go. I know you are, and Daniel, thank you for the job offer. I'll think about everything. Walking back through the boardroom, Emma felt like she was seeing Daniel clearly for the first time. Not the maintenance worker or the billionaire CEO, but the man caught between worlds, trying to do right by everyone, including himself. It didn't make the deception hurt less, but it made it understandable, and that was a start. Emma spent the weekend walking through the city, trying to sort through her feelings. She found herself in the neighborhood where she'd grown up, standing in front of the empty lot where the Phoenix mural used to be. Someone had planted a small garden there, with a bench and a plaque that read in memory of dreams that inspire new ones. She thought about Daniel's words on the balcony, about fear and responsibility, and the weight of other people's expectations. She thought about her own fears, about being vulnerable enough to trust someone who could hurt her in ways she'd never experienced before. Monday morning, she called Patricia Wells. I'd like to accept the design position, she said. Wonderful. Mr. Cross will be pleased, but I have conditions. I want to work directly with the community programs, not through intermediaries. And I want creative control over the artistic direction. I'll make sure Mr. Cross knows. Can you start next Monday? After hanging up, Emma sat in her small apartment surrounded by her art supplies and half-finished projects. She was taking a leap into unknown territory professionally and personally, but maybe that was what courage looked like. That evening, her doorbell rang. Emma opened it to find Daniel standing in her hallway, back in jeans and a simple sweater, holding a canvas wrapped in brown paper. Hi, he said uncertainly. Hi. I wanted to return something to you. May I come in? Emma stepped aside suddenly, self-conscious about her cramped studio apartment with its second-hand furniture and art supplies scattered everywhere. But Daniel looked around with genuine appreciation. This is perfect, he said. It feels like you. He handed her the wrapped canvas. I bought this at the gallery that night. I wanted you to have it. Emma unwrapped it carefully, gasping when she saw the breaking free painting. Daniel, this must have cost a fortune. It belongs with someone who understands what it means. Emma leaned the painting against her easel, stepping back to admire it in her own space. Why are you really here? Because I missed you. Because I couldn't stop thinking about what you said on the balcony, because I want to prove that what we have is real. Emma turned to face him. How do we make this work? Your world, my world, they're so different. Maybe they don't have to be. Daniel moved closer, his hands settling on her waist. Maybe we can build something new together. I'm scared, Emma admitted. I've never felt this way about anyone before. Have won. His forehead rested against hers. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. Emma's hands came up to frame his face, her thumbs tracing along his cheekbones. No more secrets. No more secrets. I promise. When their lips met, it felt like coming home and starting an adventure at the same time. Daniel's kiss was gentle, but insistent. It's full of apology and promise and desire that had been building between them for weeks. Emma melted against him, her body fitting perfectly against his. His hands tangled in her hair, and she could taste the coffee he'd been drinking, could smell the cologne that was becoming familiar and comforting, murmured against her lips, I love you. She pulled back to look at him, seeing sincerity and vulnerability in his green eyes. I love you too. Even when I was angry, even when I felt betrayed, I still loved you. Daniel's smile was radiant. He lifted her easily, spinning her around her small living room while she laughed. When he set her down, they were both breathless. What happens now? Emma asked. Now we figure it out together. I know it won't always be easy. There will be photographers and society events and people who judge our relationship before they know us. But we'll face it together. Emma nodded, feeling certainty settle in her chest. Together, that night they talked until dawn, sharing stories they'd never told anyone else. Daniel told her about the pressure of living up to his father's legacy, about board meetings where he felt like he was playing a role. Emma shared her fears about never being good enough, about her art not mattering in the grand scheme of things. Your art matters more than you know, Daniel said, stroking her hair as they lay curled together on her small couch. You're going to change lives with your designs. You're going to change the world with your company. It's the right way, the way your father would be proud of. As the sun rose over the city, Emma realized that love wasn't about finding someone who fit perfectly into your existing life. It was about finding someone worth building a new life with, someone who saw all of you and chose to stay anyway. 6 months later, Emma's community outreach designs for cross industries had increased volunteer participation by 40%. Her small studio apartment had been replaced by a bright loft space that served as both home and art studio, paid for with her first real salary as an artist. But the best part was the way. Daniel looked at her across the breakfast table each morning, like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Like she was home, ready for the gallery opening tonight, he asked. Straightening his tie, Emma smoothed her dress. A deep blue creation that complemented her skin and made her feel powerful. Ready? I still can't believe they're featuring my community series. I can. You're brilliant, Emma Rodriguez. I love you. I love you too, Daniel Cross. All of you. As they walked out into their shared future, Emma thought about the Phoenix mural from her childhood. Sometimes beautiful things were destroyed, but sometimes they were just transformed into something even better, something that could fly.